You don't necessarily have to be in that location to earn dirhams or to earn pounds. You're literally living hand to mouth when you're starting your career in South Africa.
You're treated differently here based on where your experience is.
People would be so surprised by the way some companies are run. Once you leave the borders of your home country, you realize how narrow-minded your thinking is.
There are different places that work for different phases.
The outside world is forcing you to stay within that corporate environment. In your mind, you think, well, that's actually not what I'm trying to seek out of this life. I was constantly being pressured by external forces to stay in the comfortable environment, which makes it that much harder to actually make that jump.
There are a lot of high earners who are very, very unhappy. It's consuming their life, but they also feel like this work is meaningless. I am smart enough to figure out how to make money whilst doing the things I actually enjoy.
Everyone is considered a real estate expert when the market is doing that. I like to find myself in a position where I've got nothing left, and it kind of triggers that fight or flight mentality.
I hope you guys are excited to get into this episode. Don't forget, if you would like to purchase an investment property in Dubai, make sure to fill out the form below and book a free consultation with me. Welcome to the Building Wealth with No Borders podcast with me, Lamide Elizabeth, where I'll be bringing you guests from around the world to share their strategies on building wealth. And today we are in Dubai with the CFO of Falco Consulting and chartered accountant, Matt Whitmore. Welcome, Matt.
Good to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
So to get started, can you just introduce yourself to the audience? Maybe just talk a little bit about your background, where you grew up, what you studied, etc.
Absolutely. So before I dive into that, I also just want to point something out as how impressed I was with kind of coming into the studio. The fact that you have flown in this morning, you are here all set up, ready to do a podcast, and you're flying out this evening. And I think that just stands testament to kind of your proactiveness and the energy that you're putting into this. So I want to say thank you so much. And it's great to be here today.
Oh, thank you.
So a bit more around my journey. I'm originally South African. I spent majority of my life there. I studied in South Africa to become a chartered accountant, and then swiftly went across straight into Deloitte London, where I did my articles in the private markets division. Following my time at Deloitte, I then shifted into mergers and acquisitions, into the special situations M&A team, which is a small team of 12 that deals with distressed assets or the distressed sale of businesses, businesses reaching a liquidity pinch point or some kind of financial difficulty and are looking to exit to either one of their competitors or to a private equity house. During my time at Tenera, I also founded the Yandisa Foundation, a cause extremely close to my heart, which focuses on young boys and girls back in South Africa, helping them get through life from the ages of around 8 to 9 years old. It's a very individualized approach where we select someone at a young age and we carry them through to 21. So that wouldn't be where it is today without the incredible team that supported me from the start of that journey, but something that's more of a passion project and something very close to my heart. After spending 5 years in London, I then got the opportunity to kind of go forward on more of the entrepreneurial side of, this entrepreneurial flame that was burning inside me my whole life. I now had the opportunity where I'd gathered the skill set, worked in a high intensity environment for 5 years, and I was ready to now take that skill set forward into running my own business. So I was then given the opportunity to come over to Dubai to start a real estate company as the CEO and founder. And that started with just, a table, a chair, and a whiteboard. And within just under 2 years, we grew that into a full operation of 40. Outside of that, after that, I then started to open more businesses, a small recruitment company, a health, wellness, and networking company. And more recently, where I focus 85% of my attention is Falco Consulting. And that's where we are here today.
Amazing. We are going to take it all the way back.
Okay.
And then we're going to come back. So why did you study, what did you study at uni? Accountancy?
Yeah.
Why did you do that?
It's a good question. I think maybe it was a bit of pressure from the family. I come from a family of chartered accountants. And I think when I was a lot younger, and maybe some other viewers out there feel in a similar position, I always had an ambition to start my own companies. I feel I had the skill sets, or at least the drive to want to do that from a very young age.
Why though? Did you see someone in your family do it? Or?
No, it wasn't that. It was all the way from, I actually did a speech the other day at a junior MBA class, and I touched on this exact journey, kind of inspiring them to say, everyone has to start somewhere, whether it's, from the ages of 10, we had a grapefruit tree at the house. I was picking grapefruits. I was cutting them up, pouring some sugar and selling them on the road outside the house as a small business. And then when I went into high school, we had kind of a biltong packaging business where we were packaging biltong and selling it throughout the school, into all of the tuck shops, into all of the restaurants on the school campus. And it's always just something that I've always been involved in. I've always wanted to start the next Venture, sorry.
So no, it's good. So when you're doing that, right, where does the satisfaction come from? Is it the money that you're receiving, or is it like, oh, I had this idea, let me see if it's going to work? Like, what was the thing that was like, oh yeah, because I had some entrepreneurial ventures growing up, but mine was out of like, I need money.
Yeah.
So it was like, I need money. What can I do? Okay, I can do hair. I'm going to do hair to make money. But what was it for you?
It's a really good question. I think if you'd asked me that when I was 16 years old, I probably would have said it was predominantly financially driven. I think nowadays it's shifted into more of a freedom. I think it's the freedom to be able to, work wherever you want and bringing your own ideas to life. And I think more importantly, coming from a corporate background, is the amount of effort, what you get out is a direct result of what you're putting in. So the harder that you work, the more passion that you give to a project, the more, the more that you're getting out. So yes, that's from a financial aspect, but also that you're getting out in terms of freedom, growth, and being able to take that to the next level.
So the 16-year-old you, what was the motivation? Money.
It was money. It was financially driven.
And what was you using the money for?
And I think it was a proof of concept as well, just to prove that I could do something. I think in school, and there was a big shift for me academically. But when I started in school, I struggled to focus in class. I maybe wasn't considered the smartest person in the room. And I think it was also just a way to prove myself that there was more to me than just what my academic report cards were saying.
Right. Okay. I like that. I think you do see that a lot. So, okay, cool. That's good. I like to know that. So then after you did your university, your first job was in London. Am I correct?
Yes, correct.
So what made you move to London? Because it is very well known that South Africans in general don't like to leave South Africa. Now, I don't know if that's mainly a thing with the Black South Africans. Maybe it's different for the white South Africans, but they're definitely known for like not wanting to leave. And during my time in South Africa, I spent 6 months there. A lot of people don't know much about, and I don't know if it was maybe the people who I was talking to, but just general sense of what's happening in other places. Like there wasn't really a desire. I feel like Dubai is like a place that I do see a lot of South Africans who are like, oh yeah, I'd move there. But in general, they're just not that drive to want to live in other places. I get that the country is beautiful and stuff. And there's like, you have the beach in Cape Town and you have like the work capital in Johannesburg. But given that the unemployment rate is quite high, I would still expect people to want to move to access opportunities outside. Because this podcast is building wealth with no borders, right? And the idea is that like, even if there is no opportunities immediately around you, there is going to be an opportunity somewhere out there. So go out there and take advantage of that. But yeah, I just wanted to get your insight on what made you want to move to London.
And you're 100% right. There are a lot of South Africans that don't want to leave the country, but I think there's also a large portion of those people that do want to, but don't have the ability to. And I think that comes down to, the weaker exchange rates. And I think I was very lucky and fortunate in the fact that I could go up and move to London, start my career there. I think a lot of people are in, the income bracket where that decision isn't very easy. It's a huge sacrifice financially to be able to move overseas. And I think that limits majority of the people being able to go overseas, whether that's Dubai, whether that's London, New York, Singapore. I think that does limit a lot of people. One thing that I think is really important for listeners to know is that don't think just because you're not in a financial position at the moment that can't be done. And I think it speaks to kind of the podcast and you don't necessarily have to be in that location to look for a way to earn dirhams or to earn pounds. You can start putting your foot in that door, showing your competencies to companies based all around the world. And then the support in terms of getting you over to that company become a lot easier. So I think a lot of people aren't aware of these types of opportunities where you can, start to build that relationship, show your skill set and show your hunger to want to leave the country, but that you have financial restrictions, and you'll be surprised at what can happen from there.
I like that. So for you, what was it?
So for me, it was, I think it was two things. I think it was one was the financial being a major part of it. So looking more into the long term, regardless of whether I was going to come back to South Africa or find myself overseas, I think earning pounds would put me in a much better position to be able to do that.
But did you think that whilst you was at university?
I did.
You were like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So I thought that, looking at what the same role would be earning in South Africa versus London, that was a big part of why I wanted to go there.
But that's very, that's quite I don't know, I wouldn't say an advanced point of thinking, but like, do you have family who are British, or like, why did you even think like that?
I don't know. I think it's more just speaking to people. And to be honest, it was quite common, I guess, amongst the accountants. I think because it was such a glass door in terms of people knew what the income potential was in South Africa, and people knew what that income, that similar position was earning in the UK. And not in terms of, your pound for rand comparison, but in terms of what your disposable income is at the end of the day. It's literally living hand to mouth when you're starting your career in South Africa, whereas in London, you have the ability to be putting money aside each month, to be able to bring money back to South Africa to help your family. So I think that was quite well known, and that was a big incentive for me. I think the second is the growth opportunities. So, working in one of the biggest, financial hubs in the world that has such credibility behind it, I knew would just set me up and help me for any future opportunities thereafter. When, if I was considering a role and here's Matt, who's been at Deloitte for 5 years in South Africa, and here's Matt, who's been at 5 years in London, I always had the opinion that having that London journey would help me into new roles going forward.
Yeah, that's so good. I actually, one of the last podcasts I recorded here, I was saying this because I often get questions from even South Africans as well, who are like, when I'm like, I'm not anti-London, I love London, but I always obviously because I've left, people are like, I was going to come to London, but now that people are saying London is crap, so maybe I won't go. But I always say it really depends on where you're starting from, because if you're starting from a country that, when it comes to finance, London is one of the best places to be. If you want to be in London, you want to be in Singapore, these are the places where there's a big financial hub and there's so many opportunities. So I was saying to those people who ask those sort of questions, I'm in this particular country, should I go to London? People are saying it's bad. If it's a massive leg up from where you currently are, even if you go and you spend 5 years, and even if you don't come back with any savings because the tax rate is so high or whatever, if you were then to spend 5 years in Deloitte in London and then come back to South Africa, you are going to be viewed very differently to someone who has spent 5 years in South Africa. Fortunately or unfortunately, but that's just the way it works. So I like that you were already thinking like that, because that's something that I 100% agree with. We had another dilemma as well. Someone who was in, I think it's Switzerland or something. And she was there's so the taxes are so high here, whatever. But I think she was coming from a country where it's okay, but you've got experience now in even if you're doing finance in Switzerland, Switzerland is a big hub for finance as well. When you leave and you take that experience to wherever you're going to go, people are going to view you very, very differently. And we even know that with Dubai, right? One of the things that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but it's true, you're treated differently here based on where your experience is. If you have experience in US, if you had experience in the UK, you're treated very differently, unfortunately, than some people who've had experiences in, Africa or Asia. You're treated differently. So there is an optimization game that you can play by going to somewhere else, even if whatever obstacles could be in the way, even if it's just for a short period, and then leveraging that to go back home if you want to. So I love that. And then one of the things you mentioned, which I didn't actually know before, is that you did distressed stuff in at Deloitte. Okay, cool. Because I love that. So I was in credit. So we basically, you're guessing I didn't work there was a team that dealt specifically with companies that were underperforming. But I loved working in credit because you can basically see, so we would do the credit ratings, right? So I did a lot of, my God, I forgot all the terminology now.
I'm also going to struggle to
non-investment grade.
Okay.
So I did a lot of non-investment grade. I had a big non-investment grade portfolio.
Gotcha.
Obviously, so for those who are listening, investment grade are the companies who are typically doing well. They have a good rating. They are very well trusted when it comes to lending. And then your non-investment grade companies are those that are maybe starting up. Their cash flow is still a bit negative. Maybe they're newer, etc. So kind of low credit rating. And I think that there are so many lessons when it comes to finances in terms of being able to see those differences. Okay, what makes a company with a good credit rating and then one with a low credit rating? So I'm just going to ask you, were there any lessons you learned from that, even though you're looking at it from a different lens, right? Because you're looking at companies. But when it comes to personal finances or just money in general, did you learn anything from working in distressed M&A?
I did. I think one key lesson, maybe less so about finances specifically, but one thing that I think is super helpful for everyone to know is what you realize when you open the bonnet for a lot of these companies, because they're reaching a financial pinch point, they're struggling, and you're often opening the bonnets, finding out what are the issues here, and then developing a kind of performance improvement plan to take that company forward that you're essentially selling on to the next buyer as to why they should purchase this business. I think people would be so surprised by the way some companies are run around the world. Whether that's big names, strong companies within the mid-market, you open the bonnet and you just think, a lot of people are sitting at home thinking, how can I compete with these people? How can I compete with these brands that are out there? But once you open up the bonnet and look at these companies, you realize that, there's not a huge amount always going on. And I think that gave me a sense of self-confidence to, especially to kind of really push onto that entrepreneurial path when I saw how things were being operated for a company that I viewed quite highly. And you think, wow, I feel like I've got the skill set to go forward and create change in the world. So for me, it was quite inspirational.
That's so interesting. I keep saying that, but it's interesting because now that I've had more and more guests,
what they say tends to kind of link up. And this is why I also like talking to people who have worked in finances, because you get this exposure to like some of the best companies out there or whatever. And then when you kind of see, when you're in those spaces and you kind of realize, actually, these people are pretty regular people, like they're not that far away from me, it tends to make a lot of things that would typically feel like, oh my God, this is so far away, seem a bit more tangible, because you're like, well, this person is not a genius, or this company isn't all it's cracked up to be. Actually, the business model is quite simple. So yeah, I would agree with that. Another thing I would say, which is kind of irrelevant, but kind of whatever, is that when it comes to being in a distressed situation from the perspective of the lender, because that was so I used to work at JP Morgan, I think I mentioned to you, right? So we were in the position of the lender. When a client isn't doing very well, the lender actually you don't want to see that client fail. Like you don't actually want to see them fail. So even if someone is watching this and let's say like you're struggling to pay your mortgages or you have certain debts or whatever, your lender doesn't want to see you fail. It might feel that way, but if you have, like you were saying, a legitimate plan of like, okay, I've missed a couple mortgages and this is how I'm going to get myself back, you are probably in a stronger position than you think. Like, don't just crash out, because if the perspective of, from the company's perspective, why we don't want to see our companies fail is because if they do that, we lose more. We'd rather give you some leeway. Exactly. We'd rather give you some leeway to get yourself back up and then, okay, whatever, at least we can recover 80%, then you default and now we can't recover anything or whatever. So the reason I'm saying this, I was watching a video of someone who she had defaulted on her mortgage and for a couple months, but she was able to like keep her house. And it was just because she presented a plan to the lenders of like, okay, cool, look, I'm going to give you my earnings every single month. Like I'm doing this and this and this to make more money. And she was able to keep her home. So it's kind of irrelevant. But if there is someone out there who this might be relevant to, lenders don't typically want to see you fail, especially if it's not like a high street lender or whatever. Yeah. Okay, cool. So then after spending some time in London, you left and you went to Dubai.
Yes. So I think also kind of back to one of the questions that you said, that you asked earlier about moving to London and the kind of the inspiration to do that. And a lot of it was financially driven and a lot of it was kind of opportunity driven. I think in retrospect, also something that I think is super, super helpful for people to know is once you leave the borders of your home country, and not to say every country is like this, but certainly South Africa, is you realize how narrow-minded your thinking is culturally in terms of what surrounds. I have a huge passion for understanding different cultures, traveling the world. And I think that kind of got sparked whilst I was in London, because straight away I was put into a team with, 10 to 12 different nationalities, people that are practicing different religions, people that, interact a different way, whether that's personally, professionally. And I think for me, that opened up so much in terms of who I am today, is just surrounding myself in those kind of diverse groups. And I think coming to Dubai, even more so, it's an expat community. There are so many different cultures here, so much to learn. But to answer your question, why did I come to Dubai in the first place? So London was a fantastic place in terms of what I needed it to be, in terms of opportunities and, the work that I was involved in. But being a South African, I missed the sunshine, quite honestly. And I was, looking for more of a focus on two things. One is the quality of life. I was looking for a place and an environment that more aligned to what I personally like to do on the weekends, or, the type of environments I like to live in. But secondly, moving into more an entrepreneurial phase of my life, I wanted to be in a place, and I'm sure you can agree, being in Dubai, the type of place that it is, it really fosters not only, from a business perspective, but from a collaboration, from everyone pushing each other to want to do better, everyone, constantly networking. And, I think I saw this within my first 2 weeks here. I was waiting in the line at a bank, needing to do some things. And the person behind me just struck up a conversation. And before you know it, we'd exchanged business cards and arranged to meet for coffee. And I've never had that in my entire 5 years in London or South Africa. But it's just an incredible, incredible place. So that was one of the primary drivers as to why I came here, but still maintaining, being in a place that's considered a financial hub around the world.
That is, you touched on so many different things. And this is one of the reasons why I was telling you before we started, this is one of the reasons why I switched to do a podcast, because I felt like on my channel, I had expressed my opinion on a lot of things, but I was like, you know what, like I've said what I have to say, but until people start to hear other people saying these exact same things, then they'll really get it. Like she's not just saying whatever, like other people. And this is our first time meeting in person. So I haven't told you what to say or anything, but the sentiments are always the same. And I know someone who recently moved to Dubai as well. And within their first week, they literally were able to secure, someone had promised them $1 million in funding to fund an idea that they had. And they met this person at playing football in the first week of moving to Dubai. So can you imagine yeah, but you touched on so many different things. The first one, which I absolutely love, and I try to explain this to people, is that different places can work for different phases. So same for me, like when I was in London was great for someone who wanted to work in finance and investment banking. It was great. And then I moved here whilst I was still in banking, but working in banking and being in Dubai for me just didn't mesh because I just was seeing that there was so much more out there. And I was like, I can't, it's literally frustrating my efforts. Dubai is not the place for me to be working in finance. And so I left. And even when I moved to South Africa, people were like, what the hell? You're in Dubai. Why would you then go to Johannesburg? And but it was like, I'm in a different phase of my life right now. I just quit my job. I've just lost a substantial portion of my income. I kind of want to rest. I've been on high intensity for such a long time. I want someone that's a bit more laid back and chilled and whatever. And so I moved, and people don't understand that. But I love the fact that you mentioned that. Like, there are different places that work for different phases. And obviously not everybody is able to necessarily move around the world as easily. But if you do have the opportunity, like, take it up, because yeah, certain places just work better.
And people get put off by it for a long time. You know, it's that kind of thought itching at the back of your mind. And maybe you found this when you were working in the corporate world, is there's always a new carrot that's been dangled in the next year. You know, there's a bonus coming next year, but you're getting promoted next year. And it's such an easy excuse to yourself, because the outside world is forcing you to stay within that corporate environment, whether that's your family, your friends say, oh, but you've got such a good job, everything's so stable. And in your mind, you think, well, that's actually not what I'm trying to seek out of this life. I want freedom.
Literally.
I want to, you know, I feel like I have more value to add to the world than sitting at a desk for 14 hours a day. And yeah.
That's so, and it's so true, because when I left my job in London to move to Dubai and move to another bank, I left in December, which is like the worst time to leave, because one, I was up for promotion to associate in January. And then also bonuses are paid out at the end of January as well. But I got my offer in maybe they wanted me to join in October, but I didn't want to miss my birthday and Christmas. So I pushed it to December. And then they were like, you're pushing it way too far. Like, you have to join now. And I could have easily been like, oh no, just forget it. Let me just wait. Let me get my promotion. Let me get my, what else? Let me get my bonus. But it's like, in the grand scheme of things, like, I was going to make more money in Dubai anyway. So let me just go. But yeah, there are always going to be something.
And it's different. It's not easy to make that decision. And you find a lot of people that do make, maybe it's yourself included, it was definitely me, where I'd got to that pivot point a few times before I actually took the jump. You know, there were points in my career where probably 2 or 3 times where I thought, is now the time to go fully on my own. But I was constantly being, you know, pressured by external forces to stay in the comfortable environment that I was in, which makes it that much harder to actually make that jump.
What was the trigger point for you that was like, no, I have to go?
That's a good question. I think I kind of thought of myself as, you know, I didn't have much to lose. I didn't have much to lose in a sense of I could lose all of the money that I've built up over the last 5 years and I would still be able to build it back and survive. You know, in terms of if I waited another 5 years and, you know, there were potentially bigger responsibilities on my head, you know, whether that's family commitments and, you know, everyone has their own circumstances. But I thought if there was a time, now is that time to do it. And I think, you know, just watching people around you in Dubai, you know, building businesses, doing things where you just think, I know I can do it. And eventually one day that pressure just becomes too much and you think, I've got to now do it.
That's good. That's good. And I think probably the fact that you had already made the jump from South Africa to London, then making the jump from London to Dubai is a lot easier, because you're like, I've taken this leap before. So I'm kind of well versed in it. So you went from this high intensity world of like M&A and Deloitte, accountancy, whatever. And then you mentioned that you started
Yandisa Foundation. Yes.
Which is a very different sort of initiative, I would say, to the world that you were coming from. And I think it's so interesting, because I know that there are a lot of high earners who are in great jobs who are very, very unhappy. And if you ask them like, okay, what would you rather be doing? They would say, I don't know. I really enjoy baking. I really enjoy writing. I really enjoy cooking. Or like, they're just unhappy because the work that they are doing, they're putting in so much hours, they're earning great money, it's consuming their life, but they also feel like this work is meaningless. Like all I'm doing is allowing companies to make more money. Like I'm not really affecting people's lives, but I'm giving this everything that I have. Was that the kind of reason why you started up Yandisa?
It's an interesting one. So I think what the reasons why I started at the time versus what I've learned to date since running it are also like two different things. So how it all started was there was an incredible initiative in South Africa called Seed Fund, and they had a program whilst I was in London that said if you contribute £10 per month, this is going towards an individual child, and we will give you updates on what's happening to that child in terms of their progress and everything. So that really stood out to me as something like super exciting, and I thought fantastic. So I got on board and I started supporting Yandisa. It was the child that we were allocated, and we helped pay for her school fees for about 12 months before anything else started. And then I got to a stage where I looked at and I thought, I'm helping this person, but I don't even know her. I get photos sent every month. I get a report card, but I want to start building a relationship with Yandisa and getting her to know that she has an arm of support outside of her family as well. So I started writing letters to Yandisa to just ask simple questions of what's your favorite color? What is your favorite food? And then trying to react by getting care packages sent there that if her favorite food was mushrooms, we got the mushroom fund to deliver some mushrooms to her. And we started to just foster that relationship. And then I thought, with the circles that I'm in at Deloitte, I'm surrounded by people that have a hell of a lot of money. And £10 a month is a very small contribution. We actually, if I leverage that network and my position within London, we can help a lot more kids than just Yandisa. So that's kind of how it started. I was inspired by what the Seed Fund were doing. We then opened up into wanting to make change back home and see the impact, not just giving a bunch of money to the community, but rather supporting, and this is where our vision comes in, is one child at a time. So really giving that individualized support. That's kind of how the Yandisa Foundation started. And we got a whole bunch of people involved. It started with, I looked at it saying, I want to be able to pay for her to go to a really nice high school, and it's going to be more expensive than normal. So I then hosted an event, like a sofa sessions type events, which are quite popular in London, where everyone came around and I spoke about the cause, and everyone was so inspired by that initial meeting that other people wanted to join me on this journey. And we got a team of 12 together, and we started the Yandisa Foundation initiative. Now, looking back at that journey, I think it's taught me a hell of a lot more than what I wanted to get out of it in terms of just helping people. What I found it was the reverse, that it helped me more than anyone else in a sense of lessons in life. Working at Deloitte and working and surrounding yourself with some of the richest people in the world, and equally spending time in the location where 5 people are sleeping in one queen size bed. It makes you realize, what is happiness in life, and makes you question, how can someone earning 6 figures come into work every day so miserable and so unhappy, yet these people in the location that have had their house burnt down multiple times, have had tragedies in their family, are smiling every single time you walk into those communities. And I think, I actually ended up getting a huge benefit out of that lesson on that journey.
Yeah. Did you do it full time?
No, it was It was part time. In fact, everyone in the team did this. We all did it out of the kindness of our heart, the team of 12. And that's why I say I'm so grateful for the 12 that joined me. Everyone does it on top of their day jobs.
I love that. And is it still going?
It's still going today.
Okay.
We've got our second child, which is fantastic. And we're going to continue to build that over time.
So can we contribute?
Yeah, of course. There's the Yandisa Foundation website. There's the Yandisa Foundation Instagram page. So just check it out, see what it's about. And if it's something that aligns with the way that you want to contribute, absolutely, we would love to welcome your support, whether that's monetary or from a marketing perspective, or just, giving us some insight into how you think we can grow.
Okay, well, you'll send me the link. I'll put it in the description box. I'll be the first to contribute. And if you guys also want to support as well, then we can do that. I love these sort of initiatives. I don't run anything myself, but if I see something like that, like I've sponsored kids to go to school in Nigeria. My mom does a lot of charity work, and we don't even have a choice whether we have to contribute or not. Like we have to. And I think it's important. And I think also when you're doing work sometimes that feels a bit soulless and meaningless, sometimes knowing that at least I'm making money to then that can help other people in some way, shape or form allows you to add a little bit more meaning into what you are doing. Right. And I think it's, you said you did it part-time, and if you did it full-time, I was going to ask you about because one of the things that happens is when you're doing what can feel like soulless work for a long time, people then transition into these other things that they really want to do them, they're passion projects, but then there's no money there. And then it's like it feels like I either do a job that is high paying, but like feels soulless and meaningless and I don't enjoy it, or I do what I love and I follow my passion and there's no money. And what I would say is that like in this day and age, you don't need to be in either or of those buckets. That's like a scarcity mindset. One of the things I always tell myself is that I am smart enough to figure out how to make money whilst doing the things I actually enjoy. We have AI, we have the internet, we have social media. There are so many ways for you to be able to still make money and do work that you think is like impactful and meaningful. And even if that means you still do have to keep up your corporate job, but then you have a side hustle on the side, that's still another way to do it, right? So
if you're enjoying this content, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And if you would like to become an international property investor in Dubai or in the UK, the link to book a free consultation will be in the description box below. If you're not quite ready to invest yet, check out the affordable video courses that will also be linked in the description box below. And if you would like to relocate to Dubai, set up your business in Dubai, or anything else related to relocating to Dubai, check out www.theprofessionalnetwork.com.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to move on to talking about property and real estate and stuff like that. So if you just talk us through a little bit of your journey with that, just so we know who we're talking to with regards to real estate.
Absolutely. So, I never consider myself a real estate expert. The people that I work with in my team are absolute experts with over 5 years of experience within real estate. But my role in terms of why we launched Falco Consulting is, having the benefit of being the CEO and founder of a real estate company in Dubai. I picked up on a lot of fundamental issues that I saw within the market that needed to be corrected. So I think the easiest way to describe this is, is the conflict of interest that exists when, agents are on a commission only role, and often they're pushing timelines with investors to make that purchase because they're concerned about filling their own pockets. And secondly, different developers pay different commission rates. So Emaar Ellington could pay 5%, and then a new developer on the block is paid 8%. That's the investment that a lot of brokers will be trying to sell their investor. And I think that's an inherent conflict of interest, especially, for a lot of people. They might be new to Dubai. They may, not understand how these commission structures work in the background and may not understand what's going on. And I felt it's very unfair as to the investor always needs to be the first priority. You need to be representing that investor's needs on every investment decision. And I think now more than ever, everyone is considered a real estate expert when the market is doing that. But when you've got market volatility and you've got change, I believe personally, and I know at Falco, we believe that every transaction has to have two fundamentals that exist. One is a financial understanding and analysis, and the second is the market expertise and knowledge. So I think at the moment, a lot of real estate agencies and brokerages, just like my own when we launched BWC, was focused around getting people with a sales background. So they may have been working on the Toyota showroom floor last year, and now they've come in to advise clients on some of the biggest transactions of their life. And I felt there was a fundamental issue in that. When you've got potential market volatility going into after such a big growth period that we've seen over the last 4 years, I think now more than ever, investors need to understand that they're getting the right investment advice into what are the risks that we're going into, what kind of risk mitigation factors can we implement to kind of go into 2025 and the years ahead. Understanding, what does that portfolio look like based on that investor's needs. So some investors will be focused on short-term capital gains. Some investors will be focused on rental yield. Some people don't mind. A more patient investor will be looking at the 8 to 10 year hold, and they're happy to not really worry what happens in between. So a lot of the time I get the question of what are the best areas to invest in Dubai? And I think if an agent answers straight away, just listing communities, there's a fundamental problem. They need to first be asking the question of, well, what is exactly your investment appetite? And then we can talk about the communities that are best suited to that.
I love everything that you have said, because this is something that I do as well. So I refer to myself as like an international real estate consultant. And my role is to do just exactly what you said. Backtracking a little bit. So we have a lot of guests come on and they always recommend financial advisors. And for the same reason that you said about agents sometimes like not trusting them necessarily is the same way I feel about financial advisors, where people who will push you towards a certain product because they get certain commissions from it, but actually, are they actually putting the things that they are telling you to do, are they even themselves putting it into practice? Yeah. I personally have an issue with that, because I'm not taking advice from someone. You can have a playbook and just say, oh yeah, do this, do that, but they don't have a fundamental understanding of the actual underlying asset of want to have a fundamental understanding of what your positioning is.
Absolutely.
So one of the questions that I will always ask first is, what's your investment goal? Is this something that you want to live in? Is it something that you want to rent out? Are you planning to flip? Are you planning to get like what's your positioning, right? Because you're absolutely correct in that people will just push whatever is going to get them their money. And when you're sinking so much capital into something, you do want to get it right. So if I came to you, so what I'm seeing with a lot of my clients right now is we have some people who are like selling up their properties in the UK. We've had quite a few people who are like, I'm done. I want to get out. I've spent a good amount of time in the market, but like now I'm over it with the taxes and stuff. So let's say someone came and they had £1 million, right? And they're like, I just want to get started in the Dubai market. You can act like I'm your client. So maybe you can ask me certain questions that you would ask. And then I want to know what your recommendation is going to be.
Okay. So firstly, are you going to be moving to Dubai? Or is this something where you're still going to live in the UK and have an investment here? Or you're looking to move across?
Okay, I'm not too sure if I want to move or not yet. I feel like I might, but I have a family, my kids are still in school or whatever. But I do want to have the possibility to come to Dubai when I want to. So a visa option is something that I would like to explore. And when I do come to Dubai, it'd be nice maybe if I can stay in some of the properties.
Understood. Okay, so if you're looking for something that's already available, so something to move into, within the next few months, you're going to be looking on the secondary market. Because you're not going to be staying there all the time and you're going to be renting that out in the background, you're going to be focused on communities that are a lot more ROI focused. So, but at the same time, because you will be living there as well, it's not just about choosing a high return on investment area like JVC, because it's maybe not the type of area that you want to be coming here on holiday to. So it's a bit of a combination between somewhere that's giving you a good rental yield, but at the same time, somewhere where you personally feel comfortable to come and bring your family for an holiday. In terms of other options, I think from an off-plan perspective, what I would recommend is, for something close to handover. So these developments are done over 2 to 3 years. And I think if you looked at something that's potentially close to handover, yes, you might not get the capital gain from if you had got it at launch date, but it then allows you, if you're saying within the next few months that's something that you would move into, you will get some capital appreciation on that unit. And then you have some way to move into, relatively quickly.
And how do I choose the right developer? Because some are known for flipping with really good capital appreciation. Others are better known for being really good for end users. How do I choose? There's so many options out there.
Absolutely. It's such a good question. And I think even now more than ever with the new Dubai smart rating system, that especially for an investor, I think it's super, super important because you're going to have, if you're looking at your top developers like Whitmore, Shoba, Ellington, in terms of quality, that's going to benefit you in the long run with this new smart rating system that's coming into place.
Can you explain that?
Of course, yeah. So the new smart rating system is essentially a tool to really kind of separate out your low quality from your high quality in Dubai and kind of just equalize the market. And they do this by looking not only at the surrounding community, but also at the individual building itself. How well is it maintained? All of these types of things are all considered into the rating. And I think now more than ever, people that have invested in Shoba, Ellington, Whitmore, and some of these top quality developers are going to see themselves falling on the right side of this rating system. Whereas, potentially some of the older developments like Damac Hills that have that bad reputation in the market for quality are going to be massively affected. So that's going to affect not only that that owner's return on investment, but also the quality of the tenants that they see going forward. So
because that rating puts a cap on how much you can charge, right?
Yeah. So it's going to have a few different impacts, but I think as an overarching kind of principle, it's something where you want to make sure that you work, when you're working with developers of higher quality, you're just more likely to find yourself on the right side of that rating system, which I think will be super important.
Amazing. So before we move on to the next section, I just wanted to ask you, so if someone is looking at the numbers when it comes to investing the data to run some sort of investment analysis, what are the key metrics that they should be looking at?
It's a good question. So depending on that particular person's appetite, so if they are an end user, they're probably going to be less concerned about the underlying numbers. They're going to be worried more about the amenities, the community, who are the people surrounding there, how close is it to hospitals, how close is it to schools, how close is it to getting to work every day. But as an investor, absolutely, there are very strong kind of financial indicators as to what to look for. The first being, your return on investment. So from a rental yield perspective, what kind of rental yield are you getting on this particular unit? And I think too many people base this always on the historical figures. So looking at, a lot of people say invest in X or Y because it's some of the market leading rentals for the last 6 months. I think, yes, absolutely. The historical figures do provide some good guidance onto where to focus. But at the same time, you've got to be looking at the future of that community, because if you're buying it today, it's the future ROI potential that you're going to be focused on. I think another one is when we're talking about return on investments or rental yield, as a lot of people kind of mix those two terms up here. If we say rental yield, I think a lot of the time an agent is trying to sell you something, and they're going to be talking about the gross yield on a particular investment. I think it's really important to understand what the net return into your pocket is at the end of the day, because that consists of not only your maintenance charges, upkeeping that unit, but also the service charges.
Which is massive in Dubai.
It's huge. If you look at the service charge in the Burj Khalifa versus Dubai Marina or Jumeirah Village Circle, they're completely different, and this is going to have a big impact on eating into those margins.
Yeah. So for those who may not be aware, a big part of why people love Dubai is the quality of life. And a lot of that is because when you buy into an apartment or an area, there's a lot of amenities that are provided, swimming pools and all the stuff, right? And you have to pay for those things, even like running fireworks and stuff like that. Like there's so many amazing things that these communities put on, but the residents have to pay for it. So even because in the UK, you're used to kind of paying service charge if you live in an apartment, but not if you live in a house. But even for villas and standalone houses, if you're within a community in Dubai, you will still pay those service charges, and they can get very, very, very expensive. And so they will really eat into what your profit is. You might not pay tax, but that service charge is something that you have to be aware of and factor that in.
Absolutely. I think another really interesting financial analysis that an investor could do, that's potentially more of a patient investor, or is look at, and it comes down to what we saw in mergers and acquisitions in an evaluation scenario. How do we value a certain company that's not listed on the stock exchange? Well, it's multiples. So what is a similar company, adjusted for a few figures, but what is a similar company transacting at in the market when it was sold previously? And I think it comes down to, in real estate, that same concept can be applied where Email Oasis, a new development, email master community in the south of Dubai, which is kind of a new strategic location a lot of people are focused on, is, in order to understand what type of capital gain potential you're going to see there as a long-term investor over the next 8 to 10 years, you look at similar communities like Arabian Ranches and Dubai Hills and see what has happened in those prices over the years. And I think that's quite a good starting point, is those market comparables, is what has happened in a similar type of community over the last 8 to 10 years. Factoring in things like, well, there's going to be a COVID impact.
I was literally just about to ask you that, because how do you reconcile that when you're looking at the data? Because a lot of people had massive gains if they bought before COVID, and then now it's like, oh my God, how do you?
I think investors do need to understand that to achieve your kind of COVID uplift prices, it's not necessarily that realistic going into, or at least it's not that guaranteed. It's not to say it can't be done in certain communities, but it will be more difficult to achieve those kind of capital gains. But I think also we must remind ourselves that a large part of these gains are underpinned by the population growth here. And we had 170,000 new residents come to Dubai in 2024. If you look at a bit of a comparison as to what is the expected handover, the units to be handed over the next 3 to 4 years, there's an undersupply in the market, especially on the villa and townhouse side of things. And that underpins kind of a price increase. So a lot of that capital gain growth that we're going to see here is underpinned by that population growth, by that 2040 vision. I'm
pretty bullish on the population growth, because the way the UK and the US are going, I'm just like, keep doing what they're doing, because they are bringing in all the people into the Dubai market. So I'm like,
and you hear it through discussions with your friends. It's not just something that you see on the 2040 vision and you see this is the plan. You see it by picking up the phone to friends and thinking, I've come, as soon as they've come to Dubai for a weekend, it's like, maybe I could live here. And you chat to them 6 months later and they're already getting, starting to pack their bags.
Honestly, I have some clients are like, oh, how do you know they're going to achieve the population growth? I'm like, I don't even need to hear what the government has to say on how they plan. Just look online. Look at what people are saying. Like, people are moving here in the boatload. So we're going to be moving on to the wealth growth segment. And this is where one of the viewers sends in their dilemma. And all they want is for you to kind of give your opinion on what they should do. And if you're watching this and you have a dilemma that is money or wealth related, then check out the link in the description box to send in your dilemma anonymously. Okay, so I'm going to read. This person says, I'm in the process of buying my first property. I have a different amount saved that has nothing to do with the property. It's over 10K sitting in a normal account. I don't know what to do with the money. I keep hearing investing, but I'm too scared. No knowledge of this side of life. Help me. So what would you advise for this person?
Okay, so I think it's a very common question, to be honest. I think a lot of people are thinking this, and a lot of people are sat there thinking, whether it's they've been building up a bit of savings and wealth, or whether it's a once-off kind of large lump sum that they've now taken on. What do I do with this money? And I think it's such a common question. But first, I think that person has to understand what is their current situation in life and what is their current risk appetite. So really, if it's someone who's in their early 20s and has nothing to lose, no mortgage, no kids, then it's a slightly different answer to maybe someone approaching retirement. So if they're purchasing their first home in this case, and they've got 10,000 in savings, I would say, well, keeping that in a savings account is one of the lower risk investments that you can do, in terms of you're only looking at kind of 2 to 4% returns on that money sitting there. Whereas there's so many other places that could go. So I would start off by understanding what is your risk appetite. So let's assume this person is willing to take on a bit more risk, is look at their portfolio and say, what am I comfortable in terms of splitting this 10K up? So it may be, I want to put 80% of it into a high risk investment, whether that's a volatile stock, whether that is cryptocurrency, or whether that's investing in their own businesses. If you don't have a lot to lose, a lot of the time, if you have a certain idea or a business idea, this could be the chance to invest that money into yourself. And then keeping a remaining portion in something that kind of lowers that risk portfolio, whether that's more of a stable stock like the S&P 500 or gold, or anything that is a bit slightly more stable. And that's kind of how I would split up that 10K if they had it in a savings account.
I like that. One of the things I was going to say is that I think it's great. This person sounds young, but I feel like they're going to be like in their 20s or so. Yeah. I think it's great that you have enough savings to get your first property. But one of the things that property is it's very illiquid, right? So I think kind of what you're suggesting with in terms of like maybe getting into stocks and adding some stocks into the portfolio, I think that could be a good idea, because you don't want all of your money in a very illiquid asset. And especially if, I don't know if this first property is going to be their investment property or residential home, but if you have an investment property, I think that's even a lot easier. If it's going to be your primary home, there are so many expenses that come with owning a home that you live in that people don't realize, and you have to financially prep for that and have some sort of like emergency fund or just backup fund for that. So that's something to think about. And like you were saying, like, what is your investment goal? So diversification is always good. But yeah, I think that you should diversify and just open up like some sort of stocks and shares ISA, or, just get your money invested in the stock market, something that you can pull out if you need it to be. And also even just little things, if you don't have an emergency fund, etc., you can try and put your money in something that will allow you to easily access those funds if you need it to, while still optimizing for trying to get a good return on that money. So yeah, I don't know.
I think another interesting point, actually, I had a discussion with someone the other day talking about kind of that reserve fund, because I think it is a very important one, and something that, for me is hugely important, having that backup, understanding if something goes wrong, what do I have as a reserve fund? And I was having this conversation with someone the other day where they gave me a slightly different point of view from their personal journey. And I think it comes down to kind of your attitude and how you react in those situations. So this person was like, well, I like to find myself in a position where got nothing left. And it kind of triggers that kind of fight or flight mentality where it pushes me to want to do more and go out and kind of fight for it. Personally, I'm not that type of person. I fall into the bucket of, I think it's better to have that reserve fund, but it's quite interesting understanding it from, different perspectives.
That's actually so interesting. I'm also not that kind of person, but I see what they're talking about there. And I know a lot of people who are like, when I have my back up against the wall, that's when I do my best work. So they don't like to have these reserve funds. But on that note, I was actually talking to someone the other day as well, and they were talking, their strategy with property is they buy repossessed properties from the banks. And he was basically saying that like right now is the best period to do that. This is where he picks up the most properties. And I was like, oh, like why? And he was like, over like the Christmas holiday period, that's when people are the most reckless with their money. They spend all of the backup funds and stuff. So many homes get repossessed. And this is actually he's based in South Africa, or he does that business style in South Africa. And he said that that's when the bank repossesses the most amount of homes in this period, because people spend recklessly, don't have enough money to make their mortgages. And then he goes and, well, obviously benefits from that. So that's another reason why you should have these backup funds, even if you think you've got everything figured out. One little thing, and the thing when it comes to finances as well, why I always push for people to have some sort of emergency savings, some sort of liquidity, is because it only takes one event to put you in a situation where you're now making bad decisions, right? Like I know people who have, lent money to the wrong person or, let's just say that, lent money to the wrong person and then out of like desperation of, oh my God, now I don't have enough money, went to the high street, got a high street loan. And then that interest was like 15, 20%. And this person, I think maybe we're like 3 years down the line and they're still facing the repercussions of that one bad decision because they didn't have like a reserve amount to help them in that time. So yeah, I would say, I think in summary, great that you have your money for your first property. If it's a residential home, keep that money in something that's liquid because you never know when you might need it. But also don't just keep it in a bank because, like Matt was saying, the interest on that is just not going to do enough for you, especially if it's around 10K. That is a sizable amount of money. Yeah. So you should probably maybe like split it out into different things, as you were saying. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, let's move on to the next section. And this is going to be the quick fire money questions. I'm just going to ask you 3 questions and I just want you to just, wrap up your answer as neatly as possible. If you say something interesting, I might pick you up on it, but let's go. So what is the best investment you've ever made?
The best investment that I've ever made was probably the investment in myself. I would say the investments in my own businesses, taking cash out to actually invest into my own businesses and grow my own businesses. And, I think that comes down to, yes, there are ways to find funding when you're originally starting up, but I'm a big believer that when you have invested your own money, you think really long and hard and you think twice about, the outcome and the success of this business. And I found that, the investments in myself, not only from a cash investment perspective into my businesses, but also in terms of cash investment into my own professional development into certain areas, is definitely the best investment that I've made.
If I had a tally for what is the most common answer, that would be number 1.
Really?
Yeah,
okay, it's good
that's
to hear
the most
that.
common answer.
Fantastic.
But, okay, so practically speaking, what does that look like? So putting money into your businesses, anything else if other people are wanting to do the same?
I would say into your professional development, but you got to be very careful in terms of where you're putting that money into, because I think there are so many different career coaches. There are so many different courses out there where people are selling you this dream of, 100x in your day, 10x in your business. And not to say that, those aren't necessarily going to be helpful. I think it's just finding someone that you can trust, talking to someone who's got some kind of value out of that previously. Whether that is I found it super helpful to have a kind of mentor, being someone that I saw as a bit of a role model in terms of my journey and allocating, monthly sessions with them to check in and to get guidance. That would be.
Okay, perfect. Next question. What is the biggest money mistake you've made?
Ooh, try not to think about this one too often. But I think the biggest money mistake was about 12 years ago. I was asked to be involved in a crypto mining factory in Africa where they were developing an entire warehouse to mine Bitcoin. And I didn't see much value in it at the time. And here we are today. It would have been in a very different situation.
Wait. So did you invest in it or did you
didn't.
not? Oh, it was a missed opportunity.
It was a missed opportunity. So that was kind of, I guess you could say, the worst investment or the lack of investment that decision I've made in my life, where I was asked to invest in kind of this mega factory of Bitcoin mining, an entire warehouse in Africa. And I decided that it wasn't something that I was going to take forward.
Why? Why were you skeptical at the time?
I think probably being in finance and everything, you want to know all the answers. You want to understand everything in detail before making an investment. I think a large part of what the last 3 years have taught me is, that fail fast mentality is you don't have to have it all figured out from the start. You learn a lot by making these mistakes along the way. But at that point in time, I was very focused on, I was a numbers person. I was come from a finance family, and that's always the way I'd kind of view things very prudently.
When I hear crypto and biggest money mistake, I thought you were going to say you put your money into one exchange and you lost everything. Not that you actually missed out on an opportunity. It was a missed opportunity. So that's a different one. Okay, that's good. And then finally, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone who is trying to build wealth or build wealth globally?
One bit of advice is, I would say, see what your skill set is and see where best that invest. And now I'm talking from a business standpoint in terms of whether it's starting your own business or bolting onto an existing business. I think if there was one piece of advice I could give to someone, it's look for businesses that are underperforming or look for businesses that are lacking a certain element that you have a skill set in. So it doesn't necessarily, it could be a small financial investment to get yourself into the business and to make some change, but that there's huge upside. That's kind of a very high risk, high return type investment, but it's something where you can see, not just putting money in, but you can see value being added from your own skill set that you could plug into a business. So I don't know if that's kind of answered the question.
That's good. That's great advice. So where can people find you if they want to reach out to you? Or
Yeah, I'm always happy to have a discussion. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm nowhere close to as actively social as yourself, but on LinkedIn, they can reach out to me and answer any questions. I'll be more than happy to have a chat.
And the name is?
Falco Consulting, or under Matt Whitmore. Just search me personally on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you for coming, Matt.
Amazing. Thank you very much.